My husband, Mark, called me at 4:15 p.m. on a Friday. He didn't say, "Hello." He didn't ask, "What are you doing?" Through the rapid patter of rain on the windshield and the tired groan of the wipers, I only heard his voice, broken, trembling like a child who just lost the most precious thing he owned. "Sarah, I'm sorry. It's it's over." My name is Sarah, and this is the story of the day my husband lost the one thing he'd mistakenly believed was his entire life. Mark is the kind of man you can find in any office tower in this city. He's the first one in to turn on the lights, and the last one out after double-checking every number in the report. For 7 years, Mark gave that company more than he ever gave himself. He missed our daughter's first school performance because of an urgent meeting. He postponed our 5th anniversary trip because his boss said, "We need you on this project, Mark." He believed in loyalty. He believed that if he worked hard enough, the company would treat him like family. But this afternoon, that family called him into a glass conference room for 10 minutes and delivered one short sentence: restructuring. They didn't look him in the eye. The HR rep, someone Mark had helped with a printer problem just last week, kept her head down and read from a prepared script. They handed him a cardboard box, told him to pack his personal items, and demanded he be out of the building before 5 was on p.m. No goodbye party. No thank you handshake. Just the cruel chill of numbers. Mark wasn't the devoted marketing manager anymore. He was a line item to be cut from an Excel sheet. Listening to him explain it over the phone, I could feel the pain ripping through his chest. Not the pain of losing income, though God knows we have a mortgage and Jenny's braces to pay for. No, it was the pain of his dignity being crushed. Mark had always defined his worth by his ability to provide for his wife and child. He always wanted to be the hero, the sturdy wall that keeps the rain and wind off his family, and now he felt like that wall had collapsed. "Where are you?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm so I wouldn't make him panic even more. "I'm sitting in my car," Mark whispered. "In the company parking lot. The rain's coming down hard, Sarah. I can't see the road. Or maybe I'm just scared to drive home. I don't know how to face you and Jenny. I'm a failure, Sarah. I'm useless now." I closed my eyes. Tears spilled over. I wanted to shout that he wasn't useless, that I didn't love him because of a title printed on a business card. But I knew in that moment my words couldn't cut through the fog of despair wrapped around him. I pictured him in my mind, curled up in our old Honda. On the passenger seat, the cardboard box with a few small things. Our family photo from Disneyland, a chipped mug that says Dad #1, and a tiny cactus plant. Outside, his former co-workers were hurrying to their cars to start the weekend. Laughing, talking about going out for drinks or catching a movie. They passed Mark's car without noticing that the man who once trained them, who once stood up for them in meetings, was sitting inside, frozen, swallowing sobs. Mark had become invisible. The employee badge he used to wear with pride every morning had already been deactivated. Now it was just plastic. He couldn't swipe it to go back inside and grab the umbrella he left behind. He'd been removed from the system. Fast, clean, the way you delete a junk file on a computer. "Mark, listen to me," I whispered into the phone. "Just stay there. Breathe. Don't drive yet. I'll keep dinner warm. No matter how late it is, Jenny and I will wait." There was silence on the other end for a long time, only heavy breathing. Then he said, small and shaky, "I need a little time, Sarah. I don't want anyone to see me cry." And he hung up, leaving me with anxiety knotted tight in my gut. I knew that feeling, the feeling of the world turning its back on you. The feeling of being expired merchandise tossed onto the curb on a rainy afternoon. If you're listening to this story, pause for a moment. Have you ever been where my husband is? You gave everything. You worked yourself into the ground. You sacrificed time with your family. And then one day you realize you can be replaced in a blink. That feeling, sitting in your car, a cardboard box in your lap, asking yourself, who am I if I don't have this job? It's terrifying, isn't it? If you've been through it or you're living in that shaky place right now, tap a heart or leave a single dot in the comments. So I know Mark isn't the only one sitting alone in the rain. Back to Mark. After he hung up with me, he stared at the steering wheel. The rain got heavier, turning the parking lot into a white blur. The wipers kept moving. Squeak, squeak, like the countdown of a ruthless clock. Mark collapsed onto the wheel, and he cried. The tears he'd held back through the meeting, through the elevator ride, through packing his things, finally broke loose. He cried for 7 years of his life. He cried for the feeling of betrayal. He cried because the future suddenly looked like a cliff. He felt small and unnecessary in a city this big. He believed no one would care about a middle-aged, unemployed man crying in his car. But he was wrong. Through the roar of the rain, another sound cut in, unexpected. Tap, tap, tap. Someone was knocking on his window. Mark flinched. He wiped his face with his sleeve, heart pounding. He assumed it was building security coming to chase him off. Maybe company policy didn't allow fired employees to linger in the parking lot. So now they won't even let me stand in a parking space, he thought bitterly. He lowered the window just enough to talk, bracing himself for a cold warning or a rule recited without a shred of humanity. But when the window came down and the rain and cold air splashed his face, he saw a familiar figure standing there, holding a big black umbrella. Not a manager, not a former boss. It was Joe. The older security guard on the night shift, the man Mark always called Coffee Joe. Mark told me that the first thing he felt when he saw Joe was shame. He wanted to roll the window back up. He wanted to hit the gas and disappear. Because for 7 years, Joe had only ever seen Mark at his best. Suit crisp, stride confident, leather briefcase in hand, smiling every morning. And now, standing in front of Joe, was a defeated man. Eyes red, tie loosened, and a cardboard box of career trash beside him. Mark was terrified of pity. Pity hurts more than contempt. But Joe didn't let him run. He tapped the window again. Not hard, not demanding. It was patient, gentle, like a father calling a son hiding in his room. Mark lowered the window further. Cold rain spattered his face, mixing with the hot tears that hadn't dried yet. "Mr. Joe," Mark croaked. His voice cracked. He turned his head away, pretending to look for something on the dashboard. I'm sorry, I'm leaving now. I know the policy. No parking more than 15 minutes after work hours." "Mark." Joe cut him off. Not Sir Mark or Boss Mark like he usually said, just Mark. Joe's voice was deep and steady, carrying through the rain like warmth from an old heater. "You don't have to go anywhere. I turned the camera off in this area." Mark looked up, stunned. Joe stood there with rain streaming down the brim of his security cap, soaking the shoulders of his dark blue uniform. But his face was calm, almost dry, because he tilted that huge umbrella to cover Mark's open window, even though it meant half of Joe's own body was getting hammered by the rain. "I've seen you sitting here for 20 minutes, Joe said, voice soft, "and I saw you carry that box out. I'm guessing bad news?" Mark glanced at the cardboard box. The family photo, the cactus, the chipped mug. The things that once sat proudly on his desk on the 14th floor now looked pathetic. "They let me go, Joe," Mark admitted. The words poured out with one exhausted breath, like all the strength left his body at once. "Downsizing, restructuring. They said I'm not a fit anymore. 7 years, and now I'm disposable." He dropped his head to the steering wheel, both hands gripping his hair. "I don't know how to go home, Joe. My wife is waiting with dinner. My daughter needs braces. I'm the provider. And now the pillar snapped. I'm useless." Silence settled between them, only the sound of rain tapping on Joe's umbrella. Mark expected a cliché. Keep your head up. Or, one door closes, another opens. The kind of thing people say when they don't know what else to say. But Joe didn't say that. Joe reached into his chest pocket and pulled out a slightly wrinkled white envelope. You know, Mark, Joe began, eyes drifting toward the bright office tower behind him. I've worked this security post for 15 years. Every morning, about 800 people walk through that gate. People in expensive suits, Rolex watches, luxury cars. He paused, then looked Mark straight in the eye. For 799 of them, I'm invisible. I'm like the badge scanner or the automatic door. They walk past me with their eyes on their phones and AirPods in their ears. If I say hello, a nod is the best I get. Usually they don't even do that. They don't know my name is Joe. They don't care if I live or die. Mark listened, quiet, not sure where Joe was going. But you were different, Mark, Joe said with a gentle smile, crow's feet softening around his eyes. You were the only one, and I mean the only one, who stopped every morning, rolled down your window, looked me in the eye and said, "Morning, Joe. How's the coffee today?" Mark blinked. That's nothing. Just basic manners. No. Joe shook his head firmly. That's not manners. That's kindness. Do you remember 3 months ago? My grandson Timmy had to go into the hospital for heart surgery. I was worried out of my mind. I stood here working, but my soul was floating somewhere else. You were the only one who noticed my eyes were swollen. Mark remembered, vaguely. He had seen Joe looking exhausted and asked if everything was okay. You didn't just ask. Joe's voice trembled. The next day, you brought me a brand new Superman comic still in plastic. You said, "This is for Timmy. Tell him Uncle Mark is sending him strength." Do you know what that comic meant to him? He hugged it going into surgery. He told the doctor he wasn't scared because he had Uncle Mark's strength. Mark went still. He had completely forgotten. To him, it had been something small, something he grabbed at a bookstore while buying a gift for Jenny. He never imagined it would be remembered like that. And it wasn't just me, Joe continued, still holding the umbrella over Mark's window. Maria, the cleaning lady on the 14th floor. You remember her? Maria, Mark whispered. The one who comes in early? That's her. She told me you're the only department head who ever lifted your feet when she vacuumed, instead of making her go around you. You're the only one who held the elevator for her when she was pushing that heavy trash cart. She cried when she heard you were let go. And Linda at the front desk. Joe went on, like he was reading the most important resume of Mark's life. Linda said you never yelled when she transferred calls wrong. You always said thank you and please. You bought her coffee on days she had to cover an extra shift. Mark felt his throat tighten. Tears came again, but not from humiliation this time. Something warm slid into his chest. He'd been so busy looking up, at executives, at targets, at higher chairs, that he forgot he'd always looked down and sideways too. He thought he'd failed because the people upstairs didn't need him anymore. He didn't realize that to the people downstairs, he'd been a quiet hero. They really remember those things? Mark asked, voice shaking. They never forget, Mark, Joe said. In a building made of concrete and numbers, your kindness was the only thing with warmth. Then Joe handed the white envelope through the car window. It's not much. The invisible people in this building, heard you had to leave fast. We didn't have time to buy a real gift. Linda wrote a card in a hurry. Maria brought some cookies she baked. And me? I wanted to give you this. Mark took the envelope with trembling hands. It wasn't sealed with any official stamp, just regular office tape. Inside was an old Christmas card, probably the only one Linda could find in a drawer, filled with handwritten messages in different ink colors. Thank you, Mark, for always smiling. Linda. God bless you, good man. Maria. Safe travels. Thank you for the comic for Timmy. Joe, and clipped inside the card, wasn't money. It was a cheap plastic smiley face badge, the kind you get for free at events. But on the back, someone had written in black marker carefully, "The kindest man in the building." Mark held it in his hand. It was light, cheap, worth less than any watch or fancy pen he'd ever owned. But in that moment, under the pounding rain of the darkest Friday of his life, it felt heavy, heavier than the title manager they'd just taken from him. "See, Mark," Joe said softly, resting a hand on Mark's shoulder through the window. "They can take your badge. They can take your laptop, your office, your job title. But they can't take what you gave away. You're not useless. A man who makes my grandson brave enough to go into surgery, who makes a cleaning lady feel respected, who makes a receptionist feel seen, that man is never useless." Mark looked up at Joe. For the first time that day, the black cloud in front of his eyes loosened. He saw Joe's kind, weathered face smiling at him. Mark realized he'd priced his worth in salary, titles, and fake praise from people above him. And when those were taken, he thought he'd lost everything. But Joe reminded him, he was still Mark. Mark, the husband, the father, the kind man. No one can fire that. "Thank you, Joe," Mark said. And this time he smiled for real. The smile was crooked and soaked in tears, but it was relief. "Thank you for not letting me leave without saying goodbye. Go home, son." Joe patted his shoulder. "Go to your wife and kid. They're waiting for a husband and a dad, not a job title." Joe stepped back, straightened his umbrella, and saluted Mark like a soldier, his highest sign of respect for a younger friend. "Drive safe. Roads are slick." Mark nodded. He set the smiley badge on the dashboard next to our family photo. He took a deep breath, wiped his face one last time, buckled his seatbelt, and started the car. The engine didn't sound as tragic anymore. In the rearview mirror, Joe stood there in the rain, waving until Mark's car disappeared around the curve of the lot. Mark didn't feel like he was running anymore. He was going home. And I, Sarah, was waiting. I reheated the chicken soup for the third time. The clock on the wall read 7:30 p.m. Outside, the rain still hadn't stopped, but the thunder had finally quit roaring. I sat at the dining table, phone clenched in my hand, staring out the window toward the driveway. Our daughter Jenny was drawing in the living room. She looked up and asked, "Mom, why is Dad late today? He promised to look at my picture." I swallowed and forced my voice to stay normal. "He's on his way, sweetheart. Today, Dad has something important going on." And then, the familiar headlights swept across the window. Mark's old Honda rolled slowly into the garage, the engine shut off. Then the car door closed. Heavy. Final. I jumped up and opened the front door before he could even grab his key. Mark stood there under the dripping porch roof. In his hands was the cardboard box, soggy at the bottom. His hair was plastered down from the rain, his suit wrinkled, his tie loosened. He looked like a defeated soldier coming home from the hardest battlefield. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see the panic or despair I'd heard on the phone. His eyes were red and swollen, but there was a strange calm in them, the calm of someone who just dropped a 1,000-pound burden. "I'm home," Mark said, voice rough. I didn't say anything. I just opened my arms and pulled him into me. I hugged his soaked body, the cold smell of rain, and the taste of failure clinging to his clothes. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but Mark spoke first. "Sarah," he whispered into my hair. "I lost my job. They took my badge. They took my laptop. I'm not a manager anymore." I held him tighter. "I know. I don't care about that title. I just need you home safe. Mark stepped back and looked at me. He set the cardboard box down on the wood floor. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the cheap smiley face badge and Joe's wrinkled card. But look, he said, smiling, a smile so bright it hurt. Joe and the people in the building, they gave me this. They said I'm the kindest man. I thought I was coming home with nothing. Turns out I brought this. Right then, Jenny came running out. She saw the box, then saw her dad. "Dad!" she screamed, throwing herself at Mark's legs. Mark dropped to his knees and hugged her. He didn't care about getting her dress wet. He kissed her forehead and breathed in that clean kid smell. "Jenny, I'm sorry," Mark said. "Starting tomorrow, I won't be working in that big building anymore. I won't be bringing home one-sided printer paper for you to draw on." Jenny tilted her head, eyes wide and innocent. "So, will you be home to play with me more?" Mark paused for a second, then nodded. "Yes, I'll be home more. At least for now." "Yeah!" Jenny jumped up and down. "That's awesome! I hate that building. It keeps kidnapping you." Her childish sentence made both Mark and me laugh, through tears. The thing Mark called a great career was a kidnapper in our daughter's eyes. The thing we were afraid of losing was the thing she wanted most, her dad's time. Mark handed the smiley badge to Jenny. "Joe gave this to me. Will you hold on to it for me?" Jenny's eyes lit up. "So cool. Are you the Smile Police, Dad?" "Yeah," Mark winked. "I'm the Smile Police." That night, our dinner happened later than usual. The chicken soup was a little too salty from being reheated again and again, but Mark ate like it was a feast. We didn't talk about debt. We didn't talk about unemployment benefits or sending out resumes in the morning. Those worries were still waiting outside the window, lined up for tomorrow. But tonight, under the warm yellow kitchen light, we talked about Joe. Mark told Jenny about brave little Timmy. He told her about Maria. He talked with a pride I'd never seen when he used to talk about million-dollar contracts. I watched my husband. He'd lost his business card, his paycheck, his status. But he'd found himself again. He wasn't a money-making machine anymore. He was Mark, a kind man who finally understood that his worth comes from how he treats the world, not how the world pays him. While we washed dishes, Mark stood beside me and dried plates. He said quietly, "You know, Sarah, sitting in that car in the rain, I thought my life was over. I thought if I wasn't a manager, I was nobody. But Joe taught me something. A job is just a coat you wear. Kindness and love, that's your skin." I turned and kissed his cheek. "And you've got really good skin, babe. Tomorrow, the storm will come back. We'll have to tighten our budget. Mark will have to start over at 40. There will be rejections and hard days. But I'm not afraid. And I know Mark isn't afraid the way he was anymore. Because he understands that wherever he goes, whatever job he does, whether he becomes a director again or ends up delivering packages, he'll still carry that invisible badge Joe gave him." Background music shifts to a soft, inspiring piano. To everyone listening, life will sometimes take away what you thought mattered most. Your job, your status, your money. It will shove you onto the curb on a rainy afternoon with a cardboard box in your hands. And there will be moments you feel useless, small, forgotten. And if right now you see yourself in Mark's story, or you know someone like him, a husband, a father, a friend, quietly carrying pressure and feeling alone out there, don't stay silent. Share this story with them right now. Or tag your quiet hero in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss our next stories. Tell them something they may not have heard in a long time. I'm proud of you. And no matter what happens, you still matter most. Your share could be the umbrella over someone's heart when they're soaked and freezing inside. Because please remember this, your value is not in the title printed on a business card. Your value is not in your bank balance. Your value is in the smile you give the security guard every morning, in holding the elevator for the janitor, in showing up fully at your family table. Don't let any company, any layoff letter define who you are. You are bigger than that. And if it's raining in your life today, look carefully. Maybe there's a Joe somewhere holding an umbrella, just to remind you, you're a kind person, and this world still needs you. I'm Sarah. Thank you for listening to our family's story. And my husband Mark says hello. He's busy teaching our daughter to draw, using one-sided printer paper, but with a whole, two-sided heart.